Have you ever wondered how something as ordinary as going to school became a cornerstone of American life? Let's step back to the 19th century United States, a time of swirling change, big dreams, and even bigger questions. What led communities to rally around the idea of mandatory public education? Why did people like Horace Mann devote their lives to the cause? And how did schools become engines for shaping not just minds, but the heart of a new nation? Picture the early 1800s. America is growing by leaps and bounds. Farms are giving way to factories, cities are swelling with newcomers, and democracy itself is in flux. In this whirlwind, the idea of a common, tax-supported school system starts to take root. But it's not just about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's about forging citizens who can steer the republic, workers who can fuel its industries, and neighbors who can understand one another. Let's meet Horace Mann, often called the father of the common school. Mann didn't just see schools as places for lessons. He saw them as laboratories for democracy. Have you ever heard the phrase, the great equalizer? Mann believed that education could level the playing field, giving every child, regardless of background, a shot at a fuller life. As the first secretary of the Massachusetts Board of Education, he championed free, universal, and non-sectarian schooling. His vision was contagious, sparking reforms far beyond Massachusetts. But Mann wasn't alone. Henry Barnard pushed for better schools in Connecticut and Rhode Island, always asking, how can we make learning more accessible? Catherine Beecher, meanwhile, posed a fascinating question of her own. Why not trust women as teachers? She saw teaching as both a calling and a craft, and she fought for women's place at the front of the classroom. Together, these trailblazers built the scaffolding for the system we know today. Now, let's dig into the institutions that made this dream a reality. The Common School wasn't just a building, it was an idea. These tax-supported elementary schools offered a shared educational experience for children from every walk of life. To make sure teachers were up to the task, the first normal schools, teacher training colleges, sprang up, with the first public one opening in Lexington, Massachusetts, in 1839. State boards of education followed, charged with keeping the wheels of reform turning. But why did all this momentum gather in the 19th century? Industrialization played a big role. As the economy shifted from farms to factories, a new kind of worker was needed, literate, punctual, and ready to cooperate. Factory owners began to see schools as training grounds for the workforce of tomorrow. At the same time, immigration was reshaping the nation. Waves of newcomers, especially from Ireland and Germany, brought fresh languages, customs, and beliefs. This raised an interesting question. How could so many different people learn to live together? Public schools became a tool for Americanizing immigrant children, teaching them English and the values prized by the Protestant majority. The democratic spirit was another powerful current. Reformers argued that a republic could only survive if its citizens were informed and engaged. By fostering a sense of unity and civic responsibility, schools were seen as bulwarks against social conflict and crime. And while the push was for non-sectarian education, there was still a strong desire to instill a common moral code, one that would anchor the character of the nation's youth. So, what if we looked at the movement for mandatory public education, not just as a policy shift, but as a grand experiment in nation-building? The fascinating part is how these different threads, economic ambition, cultural anxiety, and democratic faith, wove together to create something lasting. But this also raises an interesting question. How did the goals and values of those early reformers shape the schools we know today? And what might they have overlooked? Take this further by exploring how public education has continued to evolve in response to new challenges. How do today's debates about curriculum, inclusion, and funding echo the questions that animated Horace Mann and his peers? And what questions does this history raise for the future of learning in a diverse and ever-changing society?